No, thank you. Sleepy. Come back in an hour. Need sleepy. Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God!
It's now time for the Billy C. Morning Show, part of the Billy C. Boxing Network. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Morning Show. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing all right. And a special shout out to all of our Fight TV viewers. And on your handhelds, fight.tv, F-I-T-E.tv. Glad to have you with us today. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located in St. Simons Island, Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. And you can also give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Don't forget, it's 15 minutes out your way off of I-95. If you're heading south or if you're heading north, doesn't matter. Take the 15 minutes. Use his bathroom. You know, don't worry about it, but you got to get something to eat. And if you do, you get a free cannoli if you mention that you listen to Sal on this show. So check it out, man. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by JKJ Boxing Magazine. And if you're looking for a free copy, I'll hook you up. Visit our website, www.billycboxing.com, and click on the JKJ Boxing Magazine cover, which is located on the right-hand side. And today's show is being brought to you in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now, where all good books are sold. And you can literally get a copy of it right now as you're watching or listening to this show by visiting barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Find out why we got a 5-star rating across the board. Read my book, and you'll share my passion for trying to get the recognition for Tom Molyneux that he rightly deserves. See what I'm talking about? It's a quick read. Once you start reading this book, you will not be able to put it down. Trust me. Want a signed copy? Visit our website, www.billycboxing.com, and go into the book club section. Listen, today we're not doing a live show tomorrow, so today we're going to open up the phone lines for the. We're going to open up the fan lines for the phones. No, we're going to open up the phone lines for the fans. And you guys can give me your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns. But today, you know, my main topic is concerning the so-called open letter that Keith Thurman wrote to boxing fans. And all I'm going to say is this, that this open letter, and I'm going to talk about it here in a second, is nothing more than bullshit. And I hate to use the phrase bullshit, but it's bullshit. It's another example of smoke screen, drink the Kool-Aid. Let me try and manipulate you, the boxing fan, to believe more bullshit. All right? And I'll get to that in a second. Also, coming up in a little bit later on the show, today was a very important day in the sport of boxing in terms of its history. And I'll get to that at the end of the show, what took place on this day that still echoes a haunting feeling for the sport. We're also going to give you an update on Adrien Broner, the Manny Pacquiao and Jesse Vargas undercard was announced. So we'll be doing that, and all of that is coming up in a few minutes, as well as opening up the phone lines. But first, joining me right now, New Jersey Boxing Hall of Famer, Guinness World Record holder, Sal Rocky Senecola. What's up, Sal?
I'll tell you, Bill, with an introduction like that, I'm thinking about making another comeback.
There you go. There you go. You know, what
How
are you going to do? But, you know, I'm a little riled up today. And I gotta tell you why. Before we start getting into a couple of emails. You know, there was an open letter written yesterday, and actually Coach was talking about it in the chat room, from Keith Thurman. Now, we're supposed to believe that Keith Thurman actually wrote this letter, which I find it hard to believe. No disrespect to Keith Thurman, but to me, the letter sounds like a rah-rah letter for the PBC. And it's funny because I was talking about that yesterday to Larry Hazard, and I got this feeling, since there's no other, at least as of now, there's no other PBC televised broadcast for the rest of this year except for one. And, this is the telltale. Remember, Sal, people invested, and we've talked about this many times both on and off the air, people invested over $500 million into the PBC and haven't seen a penny in return. The only guy making any money is Al Heyman, because he's getting a cut from the inflated purses that the fighters are getting. And at the end of the day, they were hoping that these networks were going to pay the PBC to put on this event. I'm not so sure it's going to happen, but let me read you what's really got me going with this letter. I'm not going to read the whole letter.
I can tell you're agitated.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I'm not going to read the whole letter, even though he mentions all of PBC fighters, with the exception of Triple G and Andre Ward. But here's what he says, and the reason why it hit a nerve is because one of these lame-o social media boxing fans had used the same terminology to me, not directly to me, but to our show a couple of weeks ago. And what they said was the sport's evolving. And this is in response, Sal, to what you and I talk about a lot. You and I talk about the old days in boxing and some of the problems with today and safety first and how fighters don't fight each other, la-da-da-da-da. Well, their answer is the sport is evolving. And the new sport of boxing, is safety first. And the new sport of boxing means that fighters aren't going to go after each other and try to be entertaining, that it's basically all about them, and that we as fans should accept that. And I say no. And Keith Thurman's so-called open letter to boxing says the same thing. He says the sport is evolving, and thus the conversation is changing. The other thing that gets me is he says, I'm one of the biggest stars in boxing. I'm the welterweight world champion. I'm on all of the pound-for-pound lists. First of all, he's ranked number 5 on our rankings in the welterweight division. He's not even the top welterweight on our rankings, all right? He's not even close to being on a pound-for-pound list as far as I'm concerned. I just think that this is totally BS. What's your quick thoughts? I mean, the sport is evolving. I mean, is it evolving and we're not rolling with the changes? Is this on us, Sal? Are we the idiots here? Or is this just another form of bullshit and Kool-Aid that these con men are trying to shove down the boxing fans' throats?
Bill, that's a serious question and statement from a top-ranked fighter that's active and has his say in agreement with some of these issues that you and I discussed as far as fighters' mindset and mentality. I mean, you and I grew up watching or hearing the stories about the Rocky Grazianos, the Tony Zales, the Marcianos, the Aris we saw, and all of the, hey, I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to come to the middle of the ring and meet you, and we're gonna make it happen. Yes, that doesn't mean you stick your shit out there to get hammered every damn time. No, but you're slipping punches, you're evasive, you're doing this, you're dishing out, and you and I've noted that it looks like safety first is the concern of a lot of these fighters. Henceforth, since Muhammad Ali and a lot of other fighters have had a early demise and disability and disabling effects of fighting, it's a big concern. And Mayweather, safety first, the kind of thing and the kind of fighter he is it evolving? Is it going to be sooner or later, all right, like a game of tag? Here, I hit you, you got to come and get me. And I mean, it's a debatable issue. I mean, you're looking at guys that enter the game today. Henceforth, they've also seen how Floyd Mayweather fights, and and hit and not be hit, and that is part of the school of boxing. And maybe it's the younger fans, the younger mindset that are following in that tradition, early tradition. The old tradition is the old school. And the Sugar Ray Leonards, believe it or not, is going to be old school. The Muhammad Ali's, the this and that, and it's frightful where we are going, because it is my kind of fighting. Not really. No, I think the Boom Boom Mancini era, and myself, and the great fighters of Pernell Whitaker. I mean, that was a great era, and he was a boxer puncher. And I think the young fans today are being led down that road, and you're right with that statement. And if that's what their benchmark is, then maybe the sport has taken a turn and is either evolving on that level, or we just need some of the old throwbacks. I mean, look what boxing has done to itself with the rounds 13, 14, and 15. I don't want to ramble on about this. I can go on and on. I want to throw it back to you and get some feedback.
Well, Keith Thurman goes, he says, I draw millions of fans to watch my fights, whether it's on TV. I set network ratings. I sell out arenas, and I give the fans what they want every time I step foot in the ring. What Kool-Aid is he drinking? I mean, first of all, he doesn't sell out arenas. And the only time they ever drew over 1 million people watching was when he fought Sean Porter. I mean, I don't understand. And now you're going to have a whole slew of young fans, listening and believing this crap, and it's sad because, we talked about it yesterday. Boxing, what makes fighters great is when they have a dance partner to share the greatness. You mentioned Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali had several. And he started off with Sonny Liston. He ended up with Joe Frazier and George Foreman and Kenny Norton. I mean, these are guys he fought several times, and they were all epic fights. And the bottom line is that's what made Muhammad Ali so great. Sugar Ray Robinson, had Jake LaMotta and many others that he fought. Sugar Ray Leonard had Tommy Hearns and Hagler and Roberto Duran. These great fighters had other dance partners, and they made these fights and their legacies, stand the test of time. These guys today, what we're supposed to accept is that they are good, but they don't have to show it in the ring. We got to accept that they're just good enough, and we're supposed to put them on a pedestal. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. They got to show me. They got to fight. They got to fight the right fights. If it's all about safety first, then don't get into this game. Listen, if everybody's so concerned about safety, why don't we just outlaw boxing? Because, the bottom line is nobody's forcing anyone in. And don't get me wrong, I want the fighters to live, fulfill their lives and live, a normal life after boxing and everything else. But you know what? Choose something else if you're not willing to sacrifice. Any career you choose, you got to sacrifice something. If you want to be a lawyer, you're going to sacrifice the time that it takes to get educated and become a lawyer. That's called sacrifice. Obviously, the sports business, the sacrifices are more, but this is a joke to me. It's a joke. Boxing is evolving. What? The sad thing is, and I think you said this the other day, the sad thing is the athleticism of these fighters today is way better than it was in yesteryear. There's no question that the athleticism is better, but they're not even letting it go. Just because they're in better shape, just because they know more about nutrition, et cetera, doesn't mean that we automatically have to accept what it's become. I'm sorry. Maybe we're the last group. Maybe people after us are all going to accept it, but I got news for you. I can't see fans becoming lifelong fans and following this sport if it's all going to be pitter-pat, pussyfooting around in the ring and just, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, oh boy, I'm going to do this when I get him in the ring. It's all BS, man, and it's pretty aggravating, to be honest with you, Sal.
No, I hear you, and I share your sentiments there. I'm telling you, you just rattled off. We learn at a young age. Styles make fights, and when you say the dance partners, we can list of those world champions from the 70s, 80s, even 30s, 40s, and 50s, some of the greatest fights that have ever been inside the squared circle. And we can list the fighters, we know their records, we know of them, and they left a legacy. They left a legacy for the generation of the 70s and the 80s and even some of the 90s. And that's why, but like you were saying also a couple weeks ago, there's not too many memorable Floyd Mayweather fights that I could bring up and remember that were great.
There's none.
They were good, but you know, you could rattle off anyone of Leonard Hearns or Hagler or Duran and Ali, Kenny Norton, and any one of these guys, and we have an impression of that fight in our minds. You think 30, 40 years from now, many fight fans or many people are going to remember, hey, do you remember when Floyd Mayweather did this against that one, or how he fought this? I don't think so. I think fighters, what makes them great is their opposition, as you were saying, and they rise to the occasion. They get up off the canvas. They fight that extra round. It's a fighter. It's like getting a mackerel. I like getting a game fish on the other end of the line. You gotta fight it. That's a hell of an analogy. We'll rewind that one. You know what I'm saying.
I do. And, you know, I find it hard to accept that, you know, and like I keep saying, you know, there's only one Floyd. But if everybody's going to try to emulate him, we're in for a really boring sport. And I just can't see fans wanting to watch it and look forward to, you know, what people could look at as a chess match. You know, oh, yeah, a chess match. Well, I'd rather watch chess then, you know, because I'm not going to shell out $80, $75 to watch BS. But with that said, they announced the Manny Pacquiao, Jesse Vargas undercard. And, you know, if you recall, Sal, this pay-per-view is being handled by Top Rank. HBO said no. Yeah. HBO said no. Showtime said no. So Bob Arum said, well, you know, I'll produce it myself. And this was the way it used to be. Before the cable network stepped in and foot the bill, basically, and made it real easy for the promoters. The promoters used to do it. The Top Ranks, the Don Kings, the Duvas, and et cetera, et cetera. This is what I recall of pay-per-view fights. So in addition to Manny Pacquiao fighting Jesse Vargas, all right, which is a pretty good fight. I mean, considering Manny Pacquiao has lost his step, he's aging. Jesse Vargas is young, up and coming. I mean, it's going to be a good matchup. It's a 50-50 fight. We've talked about this before. But check it out. Nonito Donaire, in a world title fight, he's defending his belt against the number one challenger, okay, Jesse Magladeno, who's undefeated at 23-0. That's going to be one of the fights on the pay-per-view. Then you have, that's a good. That's actually a good fight. You know, also Valdez, Scar Valdez, his nickname Scar Valdez. He's 21-0. He is making a title defense of his belt against his number one contender and mandatory challenger in Hiroshi Asuaga, who's 30 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws. That's another one. And Zhao Shiming, who's a phenom, is going to be taking on Kawachit Wonsong Chai Jim in a rematch in the flyweight division, which is also a good matchup. I mean, they may not be household names, especially the Zhao fight, but that's a rematch that Zhao lost. And this is going to be a good 3 good fights that we're looking forward to.
That's a good little undercard, Bill.
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is, you know, if you're going to shell out money, these are the kinds of fights you want to see. You don't want to see showcase fights. You want to see fights. No. I mean, they're all 50-50 fights. I can't tell you for sure who's going to win between Jesse Magladeno and Nonito Donaire. You know, I don't know. It's a 50-50 fight. It's a 50-50 fight with Pacquiao and Vargas, you know. So I applaud Bob Arum, although he had to do it. He was basically forced into doing it. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing.
Well, you know, you and I talked about this. You know, the the game has evolved, good, bad, or indifferent, from the networks, from the grassroots promoters. Like I said, Don King, whether you love him or hate him, was one of the greatest promoters that the history of boxing has known. And then Bob Arum is in that same school, the same class. So these guys do know the era of boxing and how it has evolved or not. And, so it's good. Maybe there's a throwback. You and I talk off the air a lot, about forming our own league. Let's bring back the 15 rounds. Let's do away with some of the other things that they negated already in the game of sport. And it's amazing. But I applaud Bob Arum as well. And hopefully this will give the fans a little taste of what fighting is and what fighting could be, as long as the fans demand the kind of performance and shows that each fighter can bring to the other.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing. If Bob Arum turns around and puts this pay-per-view, in the neighborhood of $60, 59, maybe $49.95, and then $59.95 for the high def version, I think he even hits more of a home run.
I think we should write him a letter to say that. I think we should be on his marketing team.
And then he'll flip us both the bird like he did when he signed Conlon from the amateurs. But another thing I want to bring up before we read a couple of emails real quick is, remember when Adrien Broner got arrested because he beat up a guy while they were betting on bowling? And then he was supposed to go to court, and then the guy dropped the charges. But Adrien Broner figured he didn't have to go to court, and he showed up 2 hours late, and he was drunk and everything else, and they immediately threw him in the slammer for contempt. Well, it was officially announced yesterday that the charges have been dropped. They had another court date after Adrien Broner served his 30 days, and to go through the legal channels. The guy who put the charges up did not show up, so therefore they dropped the charges. So Adrien Broner dodged a bullet there. We all know that he probably threw some money to this guy to disappear for a while, and this is over. But just another example of, paying your way to get out. I wonder if this is going to change Adrien Broner at all. What do you think?
I don't know. It depends on how many people. I remember he pleaded, and he was requesting fans to write letters to him in prison, right? In jail, wasn't he doing that one time?
Yeah, he was.
People write him and give him gifts or something like that, and I mean, forget about it.
I'm not so sure he got too many. In the cruiserweight division, Denis Ledebev is going to be defending his IBF World Cruiserweight title on December 3rd against Murat Gaziev in Moscow. What I didn't realize is that Ledebev is 37 years old, so we'll see what happens there. As everyone knows, Bibas Shumanov has been really trying to get a fight with Ledebev, and it seems like he's not being too accommodating when it comes to that. But anyway, let's read a couple of emails real quick. I got one. This is from Rick. And he says, who's to blame? He says, hey, Billy C. and Sal, I just want to know, Billy C., who is to blame for today's boxing's lack of toughness? It's safety first, from too violent to too boring, lack of excitement. Who started too much defense? For me, at prime, Pacquiao is exciting, but as he's aged, that excitement has slowly disappeared, and I can't blame Manny, but somebody in his era or generation must carry that excitement. Sadly, no one has. More power to you guys, and stay healthy. Well, thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Wow, what a good email. I like that. That's very good.
I've blamed this really on Floyd Mayweather. The reason why I blame it on Floyd Mayweather is because, and I say this in a bittersweet way, and I've been giving Floyd, whether you guys noticed it or not, I've been giving Floyd a lot of compliments and accolades over the last couple of weeks, because I honestly believe that Floyd Mayweather is an extremely talented fighter, and although I don't like his style, I think that he was very successful at pulling it off, not only with his ring record, but also with his bank account. Now, because of that style, and keeping in mind that he didn't do it from smoke and mirrors, maybe with smoke and mirrors to a sense of cherry picking his opponents and everything else, but the truth is, and the facts are, that Floyd Mayweather is clearly a talented fighter. Now, with that said, his safety first and his cherry picking and his picking the easiest fight for him and calling all the shots is what has happened now with the fighters that have come after him. And as a result, we are getting more and more boring fights. We're getting fights that don't get made because they're trying to so-called marinate the fights, etc., etc. And I believe that a lot of that is because of Floyd's success. Now, yes, Floyd was successful at doing it, but he didn't force everyone to copy him. And the reason that, in my opinion, and it seems Rick's too, that the sport has become a lot more boring is because of the style of Floyd Mayweather and the fact that so many other fighters are trying to emulate that, and then sprinkle in, open BS letters like Keith Thurman wrote, saying he's a pound-for-pound fighter and he attracts millions of fans and all of this stuff. I mean, these guys are all believing the press clippings, Sal.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame. It really is. And you and I talked about this so much, about the path that boxing has been taking, and why it's a debatable issue. Like I said, Bill, when I told my father at a young age I wanted to be a fighter, I wanted to, I went to the Golden Gloves, I won that, I did this, I did that, I had a bunch of amateur fights, I had a couple gold medals from the USA boxing team and all this good stuff. And I told my father I wanted to fight pro. He sat me down and said, "Look, son, you could do whatever you want to do. But if you do become a professional fighter, and especially your style, you're going to have inherent risks that you're going to take. You can get hurt, you can get maimed, you can get killed. And, later on in life, maybe your friends are going to make fun of you. You might be a little punchy." And my father knew. My father knew the balance of the scale, no pun intended, when it came to fighting, because he was a young fighter and he also was a big fight fan. So he built it out for me, and that's where I made the decision that the prize for me is worth the price, and that's what each fighter should ask themselves: is the prize worth the price? Now, that's my mindset. That's my generation. That's the Bobby Ches, that's the Vinny Pazienza, that's myself. That's our mindset. Now, you have the younger fans, the younger fighters. Henceforth, Floyd Mayweather, everything else. Safety first. It's more like a chess game. Why should we put our health on the line when I could do a good job and be a slippery Dan and box and move, to be defensive fighting? And that's something that you've got to consider. That this is what's happening. Do you want to wind up like a Muhammad Ali? Look at all the fighters that I used to follow growing up. I mean, Dwayne Bobbitt, the Michael Quarry, Jerry Quarry, they're all dead. I don't know Dwayne Bobbitt, no, what I'm saying is the Quarry brothers have passed away. They were in diapers in their 40s and from fighting and no longer around. All these other fighters that you don't hear of, they went to south. They went south as far as their path. So it's the concern of the health issues and the fighters seeing what happened to Muhammad Ali versus the fighters that see how Floyd Mayweather's enjoying his first year of retirement. So I don't know. It's you can't blame a fighter for wanting to protect himself, but then again, why in the game of sports do you want to enter that endeavor if you're not willing to put it on the line?
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. Don't do it.
It's the bottom line.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the risk you take. You know it going in. It's the same thing with football. NFL is trying to outlaw the kickoff. I mean, come on. Outlaw the kickoff.
That's what I can't stand. When they change the sport, they alter what makes it popular and famous. Philly, like I said, bring back the freaking 15 rounds, the championship rounds, 13, 14, 15. that's what's going to make the champions pull deep and get out to the distance. I mean, look at every weekend. There's a 12-round fight going on. I mean, that's all good. But damn, let the new norm be a 12-round. But damn, put the championship rounds back 13, 14, 15.
All right, let me tell you. I mean, the pay-per-view that we watched with Canelo this past weekend had 2 10-round fights on it. I mean, pay-per-view should be all championship-based fights. Even though I think that, we got too many titles and stuff, at least put, 2 top fighters against each other. The safety first. Listen, I agree with you. It's horrific to see people not being able to enjoy life, and if you want to blame it on the sport that they play or perform in, so be it. But nobody's forcing them to do it. I mean, that's the whole thing. Then you know what? If the safety is so much of a concern, if we're trying to protect people from themselves, then damn it, they should outlaw boxing. Forget about it. Outlaw it.
No,
I mean, then let's just do away with it. If they don't want to have kickoffs in the NFL, then ban the NFL. Let's outlaw NFL. What are you going to do? When they used to have, at least we don't have, duos anymore. When people used to have a duel with 2 people, shoot each other with a gun. I mean, obviously that's been outlawed. Outlaw it. Outlaw the sport. It's just people aren't going to watch 2 people that are 2 fighters that are supposed to be fighting. Thinking about safety first. I mean, it's just a different. Listen, you know what? There was talk about, maybe boxing should ban the blows to the head. Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Maybe pro boxing should wear headgear. Yeah, okay. Forget about it.
See, you can go on, and it doesn't. It upsets me too, because, like I said, I grew up in a different era, and you can't take away from the Jake LaMotta's and the Rocky Graciano, Marciano, and all those legends that we watched as kids and knew of. Their legacy was being established, and it was a different game on that level. I mean, I knew once once Mancini killed Dooku Kim, and they did away with the 13th, 14th, and 15th round. And Boom Boom Mancini is the first one. He was on this show, and he was saying how that's ridiculous that they did away with those 3 rounds that had nothing to do with it. So that's overreaction, and people trying to put a Band-Aid on. It's the same thing. Adrien Broner, we were just talking about him a few minutes ago, and how miraculously the guy that he beat up after losing a bet to outside the bowling alley. He miraculously gets off that whole case. The charges are dropped, and this was after he was held in contempt and after he did his 30 days in jail and all of those things. It's just. Let me read another email before I go into cardiac arrest here, which I probably will anyway. But this is from my man Brett from Canada. He says, "Hey Billy C and Sal, I got to admit that I was a lot happier when I saw the undercard for the Pacquiao-Vargas fight. Donaire versus Magladeno will be a really good fight, and Valdez versus Oswawa would also be a good one too. I also like the idea of rematching Zhao Schming. With the other 2 fights being world title fights, it made me think that this is how undercards should be laid out on a regular basis, and not like the one that Golden Boy did on Saturday. Oscar and everyone else who had a hand in that should be ashamed of themselves, and the fans who bought it should also be ashamed of themselves as well. That was a PBC card for Friday night on Spike TV or Tuesdays on Fox Sports 1, which I agree with. That card, and I know the numbers haven't been released yet, which is an indication that they were piss poor. That card was terrible for a pay-per-view. The main event, it did have some excitement in it. There's no doubt about that. Liam Smith performed a lot better than I thought he would. But the rest of the card, you had 2 10-round fights with prospects being showcased. Basically, it was 4 fights of showcase fights for $75. I mean, it was a travesty. And then I have to read the open letter from
Keith Thurman saying how he's a pound-for-pound fighter on everybody's list. Whose list? I want to see the list. He's not on a pound-for-pound on our list. He's not even the number one welterweight in our division. He's number 5. And to suggest that he draws millions of fans wherever he goes. He sells out arenas. What the fuck is he thinking? I mean, give me a break. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Keith Thurman is believing press clippings. He's getting something shoved up his ass, believing that he's a superstar. And let's be real. The only fight we want to see with him again is a rematch with Sean Porter, because that was really the best fight. Those are the kinds of fights that we want, but those aren't the fights that we always see. Those have become the exception, not the norm. I don't know, Sal. Let me read on a little more. Maybe something else will come. Now we got Brett getting me all riled up. He says, I agree with what you and Sal said yesterday about grassroots promotion, and boxing needs to get back to that in a worse way. I'm afraid that Bob Arum, who's now in his 80s, once he's gone, who's left that's going to do that? I can't wait to hear what the pay-per-view numbers are for the weekend's fight, and I hope it is in the toilet. Fans need to send a strong message about not accepting junk fight cards, like not buying them, or else it's going to continue. Props to Arum for showing Oscar how it's done. Keep up the great work. Thanks for the email, Brett. He's right, and we've said that a lot, Sal. You just can't buy it. But, now when you see letters like what Keith Thurman wrote, and my thought that the PBCC, I think that Al Heyman's team wrote that letter, and they got Keith Thurman to agree to put his name on it. They're at the end of their rope, and they need something. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get this new generation of fans to accept the BS fights that we have to watch. And they're trying to say that it's an evolving sport. This is what the sport has evolved into. And I'm not willing to accept that, Sal. I'm not.
Not just yet.
You can't.
There's a lot of great fights out there. You look at, come on. You want to look at a fight that you and I applauded, and it was a great, great competitive fight. Was the Chocolino fight? That was a war. It was great.
Well, listen. The term war, people are they're afraid. No. I don't want you to. They're afraid to say that. They don't want the guys to hurt each other. All of this stuff. Listen, it is what it is. It's the way the sport is. The exciting fights, the ones that we talk about, the ones that are in the history forever. The ones that never get old are those kinds of fights. When you think of the fights, you're thinking of those fights. You're not thinking of, I use the analogy all the time. Close your eyes and think of Mike Tyson. And a bunch of fights come up in mind. You close your eyes, you think of Ali. You close your eyes, you think of Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, etc., etc., etc. All these fights come into mind, right? Close your eyes, think of Floyd Mayweather. What comes to mind? Money. He's got a lot of money. He's undefeated. He's got no hair. He's thinks he's a ladies' man. He beats up friggin' pimply faced security guard. Does any fights come to mind? The only fight that comes to mind is the Pacquiao fight. And that's because it was so disappointing. It was so anticlimactic. Now, I'm not blaming that on Floyd. It takes two to tango. But the truth of the matter is he's not an exciting fighter. He never was. And if you're telling me that's what boxing is, if Keith Thurman is trying to tell me that that's what boxing has evolved to, well, then, Jesus, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch a sport that they're dancing, Sal. I could watch friggin' ballet and see it more. And the sad part about it is you have these athletes today that are bigger, stronger, faster, and they're dancing with each other.
I know. Hey, I have one question, not to get too sidetracked. Is Keith Thurman any relation to Uma Thurman?
I think Uma Thurman kicks the shit out of Keith Thurman at this point. But I don't know. It's pretty disheartening to see a guy like Keith Thurman, number one, saying that he's on everyone's pound-for-pound list, because show me a pound-for-pound list that he's on, a legitimate pound-for-pound list, to suggest that, he breaks records on networks. The only record that was broken that was associated with Keith Thurman was when he fought Sean Porter, and that is what I'm talking about. He had a dance partner that helped him achieve that, and they produced. They had a good fight. I'm not going to deny that. Keith Thurman and Sean Porter.
You know what else was left with that fight, Bill? You had the fans wanting to see a possible rematch. Because, that was a fight like that. We talked about building rivalries. We talked about the rematches. Look at the 3 fights Frazier and Ali had. The rivalries that evolved. The Hearns, the Leonard, the Duran, this one, that one. Seeing a good rematch when the 2 best in the weight division get together and it turns out one way the first time around, the second time around it could turn out the same way, or they could have a rubber match. I mean, we used to feast on the sport of boxing with those in that generation that you and I came from.
Yeah, well, it's a shame. I think that this letter clearly is indicative about the PBC and that they're on their last legs. I'm curious to see if the networks are going to pay them for it. I know that the war chest of money is clearly running on empty, and we'll have to see. And I do believe that the Keith Thurman open letter to boxing fans was an indication of that. But anyway, Sal, joining us right now is Dax Khan. He's got several things to talk to us about social media, and I'm going to take a needed deep breath. What's up, Dax?
I was just going to say, you ready to slow down there, Bill?
Well,
Good morning, Dax.
When you sent me your brand of coffee, man, because it's always you that's doing this stuff, man. So I'm never drinking that again.
All right. But anyway, some questions about the heavyweight division. A lot of people are upset about the fact that WBC is having Alexander Povetkin and Berman Stavern fighting for the interim title.
I agree with that. We talked about that last week.
Remember now, Povetkin and Wilder didn't face off due to a PED issue. Berman Stavern, what has he done since he lost the title? What did he do to ever get into that title shot? But, Tyson Fury, this is a guy who was crucified, and he lost his IBF title. He didn't lose it. He was stripped of it for wanting to rematch the lineal champion, Vladimir Klitschko. And now they take this title away from him. It goes up into limbo. Anthony Joshua ends up with it, who I think would have ended up with it anyway. But the WBC, instead of putting in some valid people in with Deontay Wilder, they go and they let this fight take place. And then on the other side, when you speak about PEDs, all of a sudden Luis Ortiz, a guy who has been accused and found guilty of using PEDs in the past, he's not going to have his fight against Alexander Ustinov because Ustinov has refused VADA testing. What's going on with the heavyweight division here? Just as everything seemed to be getting on the right track, the flagship division seemed to be going back to becoming, once again, the flagship division of the sport. All of a sudden it's falling apart again.
It's funny because didn't Canelo and Liam Smith didn't do the VADA either?
Yeah, that's supposedly. Now, speaking of that, Roman Gonzalez, he's been getting a lot of social media backlash for his fight against Carlos Cuadras because they say he shouldn't have had such a tough fight because he is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the sport. But all of a sudden, you know what? Nobody sits there and realizes Carlos was a younger fighter, Carlos was undefeated, and Carlos is a darn good fighter. And you know something? Roman Gonzalez, he did that clean. They just came out yesterday with his VADA result. A clean fighter, a pound-for-pound clean fighter in the sport. Why is he getting backlash instead of the praise?
The other thing...
you know what? That's a good point. And I praise off to him, too.
And not only that, Dax, is that he moved, he not only moved up. Yeah, not only does he move up, he takes on a guy that was arguably the best in the bigger division. The top 2 guys, the only other guy in front of him was Inoue, so I mean, how could he be getting criticized? That's what great fighters do. They take chances. They challenge themselves, and just like Gonzalez did. Anybody that's giving him a hard time are the same people that are buying into the BS that Keith Thurman is trying to sell. That boxing's evolving, So give me a break.
Not really evolving. You speak about the defensive fighters. Recently I was speaking with somebody who pointed this out. I believe it was John Scully. Willie Pep, a lot of younger fighters, and I speak about this a lot of younger fans, I speak about this all the time, how this era seems to be where fans do nothing but base everything they have about past eras off of YouTube and BoxRec. A loss all of a sudden means a fighter wasn't that good, and if the footage isn't on YouTube, everything is hearsay. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson, he said about Willie Pep, who might be the greatest all-time defensive fighter, that is the greatest boxer I ever saw. So, you know something, there's a difference between being a defensive fighter and being a boring running fighter.
This is true.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point, man.
A guy that's standing in front of you, within arm's length away, and you can't hit him, that's defensiveness. A guy that runs away, and now you got to chase him to hit him. How can that be called defense? Yes, you're avoiding a punch, but you're not in a position to land damage. You're not in a position to do damage on your opponent. Willie Pep was right there. That's what they call him, the will-o-wisp. He was right there. You would throw a punch and you would hit air, and he was right there.
Pernell Whitaker at his prime, same thing.
Exactly. Well, you got Rigondeaux right now. I mean, he's a good example of that. He pivots. He's like a slinky in there. His feet are planted, and you still can't hit the guy.
Absolutely. Now, we move over to Irish boxing. Michael Conlon spoke about earlier, the Olympian who signed with Top Rank. Rumor is, ever since he signed with Top Rank, the offices over there have been getting flooded with phone calls from overseas. Everybody over there wants to sign with Top Rank. Do you believe that this is going to, if this is true, is this going to help the sport over here and we're going to have an influx of European fighters? Or do you think maybe Top Rank, due to a lot of the politics in this country, is going to take some of their business overseas and we're going to start seeing a lot of big fights and more fights that I should say that happen sooner and quicker because the promoters over there seem more willing to put their guys into the ring and test them. Will we see Top Rank go over to Europe and have make some big fights with the Sauerland promotions and the Matchroom Boxing? Is this going to be a bonus for the U.S. or is this going to hurt the U.S.?
I think it's going to help the U.S. because I think that I think that the writing is on the wall, and this pay-per-view that Top Rank is doing right now, this next one that they're handling, we're going back to the future. So in order to do it and to be successful, they got to have big fights. They have to have quality fights. And the fighters from Europe, specifically the UK, these guys are willing to fight each other. They're willing to get in tough fights, Dax. We know that. We see that all the time. Whenever you want to see a good domestic brawl, all you got to do is look in the UK. They fight each other early on, and they don't lose value. They only here in the States do they pussyfoot around and try to avoid each other.
Absolutely, that's my point. A lot of these businessmen, especially somebody like a Bob Arum, who, as you mentioned before, gave the finger along with some other people in the picture. I forget who else was in there once they signed Connolly. So that's my point. Instead of, Arum is an older guy, he's going to retire not too long from now. So do you think he might say to himself, I can spend the rest of my time as a promoter, instead of dealing with politics, I can deal with guys who want to actually make the fights happen?
Exactly. And Sal could respond to this. Do you think it has something to do with also the fact that globally we're shrinking? So maybe Bob Arum sees the writing on the wall. It says, hey, what's the difference in the large scope of things with pay-per-view and streaming capabilities, et cetera, what's the difference if we have a fighter coming from the other side of the pond? That's just going to draw a bigger and broader audience. You're going to have the U.S. audience, and then you have the U.K. audience, where you may not be getting that over here when you're just putting two American fighters, so to speak, against each other, or two fighters that reside in America against each other, that one of them is definitely going to win and the other one isn't. What do you think that has anything to do with the plan?
I think it might be a very good long-term plan. And I think, that's part of the old, I guess, macro view of the boxing state where we are. And if he's got that much insight and vision that he could see that this is part of the numbers game, and this is what we're going to do to maximize our return and our numbers, then you know what? Kudos to him, because that is the truth. I mean, one thing too, before we went on this whole global thing with all these weight classes and everything else, we had a lot of domestic fighters that were world champions, and we held a lot of the belts back in the 70s, 80s, and maybe 90s and everything else. And now, since the old Soviet bloc countries are no longer communistic countries in a sense, then they allow their superior amateur athletes to turn pro. That also gave such a plethora of opportunities for all these fighters to say, hey, guess what? Now I just don't have to fight for my country. I can fight for me and make a living and do something spectacular. And so that's the other thing that you want to consider. You see all these other European bloc and South American and all these other world champions that have evolved. Right. With all these different weight classes, it gives them more of an opportunity to be seen on the world stage, not just domestically.
Right, and Dax, the bottom line is the willingness. They're willing to fight whoever they put in front of them. I think that...
Yeah, because they're hungry. They have a different mindset. They have a different mentality. They're not spoiled babies. They want to fight. They want to be known. They want to do something. Maybe they want to do a legacy. They come from this area and boom, they want to be on the world stage.
Well, I
so
think
they'll do what they have to do.
Yeah, I think the willingness is there versus
over the years, the Europeans have taken over, especially the English, in terms of popularity. Going all the way back to my man, Lennox Lewis. I believe, Billy always speaks about who started this. I believe Lennox Lewis is the guy that started the European invasion. But, Michael Conley, he was supposed to be on the Pacquiao-Bradley undercard, and rumors are he actually turned down the fight to be on that card.
Why? Why wouldn't he get on that card? That's a top rank event. That would be perfect showcase for him.
Maybe he felt it was too soon. I'm not really sure. They didn't really release the details, but they did verify that he was offered that was going to be his introduction to the public. But for one reason or another, he had declined that. Now we speak about another Irish Olympian, Paddy Barnes. You guys remember him from the 2008 and 2012 and 2016 Olympics. He signs to become professional with a boxing gym over in Ireland that Matthew Macklin is involved in. The double bronze medal winner signs with a gym who's currently caught up in a well-known, publicized gangland war. What would possess a young fighter to get involved in a gym that's involved in a gangland war that not only is in Ireland, but it stretches all the way to Spain, where you have the Spanish police seeking people that are involved in that gym for murders, and the Spanish police have actually seized money and yachts from people involved in that gym. Everybody but Matthew Macklin, who works out of that gym. But why would a young fighter at that age get caught up in such a thing? If you're asking me, his career's going to be over before it starts.
Wasn't that the gym that was associated where somebody got murdered and they shot the wrong guy? They were looking for his... No, he got shot. It was a fighter who got shot, and they thought it was somebody else, and there was a mistaken identity. Wasn't that the same group?
I believe so. It's Christy Kinnunen and Daniel. They're the big crime bosses over in that area. And this young guy, went over there and he signed with these fellas.
Crazy stuff.
You got to wonder if something like that makes you question automatically, considering the history of the sport. Any fight he gets into that's close and goes his way, all of a sudden people are going to say, you know what? He lost that fight and he won because of some a little bit of influence.
Well, you know what? Everybody makes stupid decisions sometime, and maybe he'll get a second chance. Who knows? But
who knows? The rumor is Sergey Kovalev, who last week had spent some time with a two-time Olympic gold medalist, Clarissa Shields. Some comments reportedly were said that Kovalev at one point in time told Claressa Shields women shouldn't fight in a ring; they should fight at home. And during a gym visit, they said Kovalev was actually mean to some of the young amateurs at the gym who were trying to spend time with him and get his autograph. Do you think that? I know I spoke about this the other day with one of the people in the chat room. Was there maybe a little bit of mistake due to Kovalev not being able to kind of translate what he said into English, or do you actually think that's Kovalev's real personality, and Kovalev actually came out and said something like that?
I don't know. I'm not gonna. I don't know. I mean, first of all, I'm torn. Because I feel that women should have equal opportunity in life, whether it's in the job market or on the sports playing fields. In this case, in the boxing ring. But on the other hand, I'll be hypocritical and say, I'm just glad that because I have two daughters, I'm glad that neither one of them chose the sport of boxing. So does that make me hypocritical? Yeah, it does. But I don't know what he meant, but the language barrier could be a cause for a lot of things with Kovalev.
Definitely not a way to buy yourself fans coming closer to, the biggest fight of your career and the biggest pay-per-view of the year.
Well, they are making him out to be the bad guy. I mean, he is playing the bad guy role. He's wearing the black cowboy hat in this fight, and obviously Andre Ward is wearing the white cowboy hat, so maybe he did that purposely. I don't know.
Maybe. Last thing, we talk about fights not getting made, and we talk about how a lot of things here in the U.S. don't take place, and they're happening overseas, and we speak about the lower weight classes and what this country's missing. October 15th, Gannigan Lopez and Pedro Guerra 2 is happening over and down in Mexico. This is another war that should be shown on American TV, because if anybody was lucky enough to see the original fight for the WBC lightweight title between those two guys, that was fabulous. And Canelo, automatically, have you heard? Did you speak about it this week? I had been out, but supposedly he's vacating the 154-pound WBO title he just won.
Well,
okay, what's his rationale? What are you doing?
Well, his rationale might be that he's a middleweight now. He's trying to accept that middleweight,
that might be his rationale. But you know what? That rationale might be saying, since Jacobs and Golovkin are actually supposed to be on that table to sign for December 10th next week, and there are two guys in that division who have Canelo in their radar, and that's Demetrius Andrade, and that is Kell Brook. Maybe Canelo, once again, is being a ducker. Remember, as Oscar De La Hoya says, he don't fuck around. He'll duck you, and he means it.
No, it's true. And I'm telling you, what they're doing with Canelo right now, HBO planted the seed. They kept referring to him as the lineal world middleweight champion, which puts him in the arena with Triple G and Danny Jacobs and, of course, Billy Joe Saunders. I predict I said it the other day, and I'm positive it's going to happen. You're going to see Triple G take on Daniel Jacobs, and then Canelo is going to land the Billy Joe Saunders fight and beat Saunders. That is his bargaining chip. He'll say that he's the lineal middleweight champ. He's got Saunders' WBO title, and then he's going to want all the things to go his way in the negotiation battle with Triple G. And I don't think that fight will even happen until 2018. If I'm Triple G, I say screw Canelo. I don't need Canelo. I really don't. I think Canelo needs Triple G more than Triple G needs Canelo as of now. If we were having this conversation a year ago or 6 months ago, I would say the other way around, but not now.
Right now, Daniel Jacobs and Triple G, they're probably going to have the second biggest fight of, should happen this year to be the second biggest fight of the year outside of Kovalev and Ward. So you're right. Triple G does not need him. And I love how Oscar De La Hoya, I believe, I forget if I spoke about this Monday, but I believe that, after Canelo was supposed to fight in 2016 again in New York, but then it came out where he had fractured his thumb, so he's not going to fight in 2016. And Oscar De La Hoya is talking about how he doesn't believe anybody's ever fought in 3 different states in 1 year. And now all of a sudden this guy's going to abandon the WBO title. I'm really starting to question whether or not Oscar De La Hoya is back on drugs, or this is just really a poor way to handle your guy. As I always say, I think Oscar De La Hoya is living vicariously through Canelo Alvarez, and he's trying to manipulate Canelo into winning these big pay-per-view fights against possible pound-for-pound opponents that Oscar never could. November 5th, Nonito Donaire, supposedly, Bill, he's making his return, no opponent to be announced. Don't know if you heard about that one at all.
Nonito Donaire?
Nonito Donaire, November 5th, he's going to make his return.
No,
the opponent's going to be announced.
No, he's fighting. He's on the Pacquiao undercard. They already announced it. He's going to be taking on Jesse Magladeno.
Did they announce that?
Yeah, no, that was announced. He's taking on Jesse Magladeno, which is a good fight. We were talking about that earlier. The Pacquiao Jesse Vargas undercard is solid. It's a good. This is what we were talking about earlier. That this pay-per-view that Top Rank is handling, not HBO or Showtime, is what we're used to when promoters used to do pay-per-views. It's a good card from top to bottom. You know, it's going to hopefully. They don't try to fleece us too much, but it's a good card. Nothing like the garbage we saw last week with the Golden Boy card. That was terrible. You know, and you're right. Something's up with Oscar. And as much as, everybody's busting my chops about giving Floyd Mayweather all the kudos, but hey, you got to give credit where credit's due. It's blatant. Oscar De La Hoya is trying to copy Floyd's success with the way he's maneuvered his career and how he's, gotten away with cherry picking and everything else. But Floyd kind of earned it. Canelo hasn't. Canelo really hasn't. I'm sorry. And it's not working for them. It's backfiring. He's losing fans. I can't wait for the numbers to come out. They're dragging their feet with him. I know it takes up to a week, but I'll bet you they don't come out even next week. They did shitty. That pay-per-view from this past weekend, Canelo Smith, did shitty. I'd be shocked if they did 300,000 buys.
That's why the numbers aren't coming out. Usually you'll be able to find numbers from somebody within a day or two, even if they're off slightly. So, yes, that's usually a key clue that numbers are bad because they are taking so long to release any of them. Last thing before we go, Bill, Alex Ramos, former middleweight contender, has fallen ill.
Alex Ramos, yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sal said something. I
was trying to hear what he said.
He said, yeah, Alex Ramos, yeah. But what happened?
The former middleweight contender, right now he's not doing well. He's under doctor's care. They're not releasing any details about exactly what's wrong with him. But, family and friends are saying that, that they're very concerned because they're not really sure if Alex Ramos is going to be able to, if there's nothing they can really do to help him at the moment. So I'd just like to keep Alex in our best wishes. We've lost a lot of superstars over last year.
That's a shame. I'm good friends with him. The Bronx Bomber, they called him. He was was a good fighter when he was active, and I've had the pleasure of hanging with him several times at fights, and I share your thoughts, man. I hope he does well. He's battled back before. He's been in trouble before, and he's battled back. So hopefully this is just another poor round, but that he can recover from, Dax.
Hey, you know what? He's a fighter, irregardless of what HBO says about the few losses on his career. You know what? He's more than a journeyman in life. The guy's a fighter. I'm sure he's going to bounce back and do well.
Exactly. HBO. If you lose 4 fights, you're a journeyman. Sal and I have been talking about that all week. It's a joke. And it's a shame that. The young fans are being manipulated and are buying into all the bullshit that's being shed out. One quick question before we let you go, Dax. What's your thoughts on this Keith Thurman letter with him stating that that boxing's evolving, it's the way it is, basically safety first, that he's a pound-for-pound fighter on everybody's list, that he sells out arenas, that he draws millions of viewers on TV, breaks records? I mean... did somebody slip this guy a Mickey? I mean, what's the deal with him?
I've been critical of Keith Thurman openly on the show quite a few times. Keith Thurman is a guy, there's something about him that just rubs me wrong, whether or not he's a little too arrogant, hasn't done anything to back up that arrogance, to make it worthwhile. I've always suspected there's some holes in Keith Thurman's game that they're not exposing. I believe that the Sean Porter fight showed a lot of those holes. If Sean Porter had a little bit more pop behind that volume, I think Sean Porter would have won that fight. When the talks were with Keith Thurman and Kell Brook, and for somehow that never materialized. I think after we watched the Triple G fight, we understand what would happen if Kell Brook ever fought Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman right now is just a guy who's holding on because there's somebody, and I mention it all the time, who keeps calling his name out, and that's Errol Spence. Keith Thurman needs to do anything he can not to get in there with Errol Spence, because Errol Spence is going to fight for that vacant IBF title, and Keith Thurman is on his radar, and Thurman wants nothing to do with any of these young guns because there's holes in Thurman's game, and the first time he steps up against somebody who is able to capitalize on it with a little bit of power, Keith Thurman's going to be exposed, and that's the last we hear of Keith Thurman. He's going to sell out, and that's going to be no more one time. It's bye now.
Yeah, no, I tell you what, I just want to see a rematch with him and Sean Porter. But Dax, great job as usual. We'll look forward to you next week, brother.
All right, everybody.
Hey, Dax, remind me
Take care, Dax.
remind me to next time we speak, remind me to mention about JKJ. All right.
Absolutely. Sure
All right,
thing.
man. I'll talk to you soon. That's Dax Khan. You can check out his column up on BillyCBoxing.com. And, Sal, I want to see Keith Thurman fight Sean Porter sooner than later. It was a great fight.
It was a great fight.
Yeah, many people say it's fight of the year, or at least in the running. We got to, if boxing needs to stay on track, you need to have those kinds of rematches. This fear of a rematch with fighters of today, that has to go bye-bye, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about, the old rivalries. I mean, that's how they're bred. That's how they're fulfilled. That's how they establish themselves. I mean, if the fans like what they saw the first time around, why not let's let it get back and let's let it happen again and see how the dice roll, And it was that close where, both of these fighters should want to do that because it was that close of a fight. And although Thurman, he got away with the victory, of course, and Porter, I'm sure he's chomping on the bit just waiting for that fight to be signed.
Let's talk a little football.
Football.
Yeah, I got I got a couple of picks for everybody. I'm giving them my diamond picks that I charge for. I'm giving away. So if you're a listener to this show, I'm going to give you my 2 picks for the week. Both of them are in the NFL. Now tonight there's a game. The Texans the Houston Texans are going to be taking on the New England Patriots. It's a strange game. As a matter of fact, the Texans are a favorite in this game by a point. But the reason why is the New England Patriots, their quarterback, their backup quarterback who's filling in for Tom Brady, may not start. So their third string guy might be playing. So, it's a trap game. I'm staying away from it. Personally, I hope the Texans win only because I'm a Jets fan and I can't stand the Patriots. So, but with that said, these are the 2 games that I'm looking at this week. And by the way, our year to date, I'm 4 out of 5 with a push for an 80% winning percentage. So therefore, if you are betting the games that I'm giving you, you're up some dollars. So you can feel free. And I want to thank my man Jerry, who sent me a bottle of scotch for hooking him up a couple of weeks ago. It finally got here the other day, and I forgot to mention it yesterday, but I figured I would mention it today. Thank you, Jerry. He sent me a delicious bottle of monkey shoulder scotch, which is really, really good stuff. So thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that big time. So anyway, today's picks for this weekend, since we are not doing a live show tomorrow, the Raiders against the Titans. Now, I love the Titans because I love the quarterback on that team, Mariota, and I love the fact that they picked up my man from Alabama, the Heisman winner, Derrick Henry. Okay, the Titans are a team to watch, and I think they're a team being built. They're taking on, built in the right way. They're taking on the Raiders. Here's the deal: the Raiders have been coming on strong. They seem to get blown out in the beginning of the game, but then finish really strong, and they're an exciting team. The Titans are 2-8 straight up in the last 9 division games, and obviously the Raiders are not in the same division as the Titans. Now, when you look at the Raiders' record, they are 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games on the road, and the Titans are home. So those stats mean something to me. What's the line on this game? Well, the Titans are the favorite in this game, being a hometown team. They're -2. So my bet on this game, and my play, I should say, I don't want to mention the word bet, but my play is to take the Raiders plus the 2 against the Titans. I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I think the Raiders' defense is coming around. I think they're going to give the Titans all kinds of trouble, and I'm taking the Raiders plus the 2 points against the Titans. My second game is the Chiefs against the Jets, Jets. Now, the Chiefs are really hard to beat in Arrowhead Stadium, where this game is being played. As a matter of fact, the Chiefs set a record for noise in this stadium. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. They're coming off a loss. They're tough to beat at Arrowhead. Last year there was 7-1 there. Their running back is due to come back, who's a star. Alex Smith is the quarterback, a very competent quarterback. The Jets, on the other hand, you got Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the league. The Jets do have a solid running game behind Matt Forte, but Matt Forte is going to be run to death. The Jets have one of the best defensive lines in football, but their secondary has been blown up. I mean, they're getting eaten up a lot. When the smoke clears, I think this is an important game for the Jets. I think the Jets need to prove that they're a legitimate contender in the AFC East and the AFC Conference. The Jets are getting 3.5 points in this game. The Chiefs are favored, as they usually are at home. I'm telling you to take the Jets in this game, plus 3.5. Now, they may not win this game, but they're going to cover. It's going to be a close game. I think the Jets' defense is going to keep the score low, and hopefully Fitzpatrick can not throw any interceptions, maybe feed the ball to their running backs, throw a couple to one of their 3 good receivers that they have, and either pull out a win or keep it really, really close. Take the Jets plus the 3.5. So the 2 picks for the week, Jets plus 3.5, Raiders plus 2. I'm taking 2 dogs this week. Good luck to everybody that follows that. What do you think about me taking the Jets, Sal?
Hey, well, that's your team, man. I know that. It's to the Mets. That's how you roll, buddy. That's okay. I'm a Yankees and Giants fan, but hey, that's good. I think it's a good pick for you, though. I do. I agree. You're pretty right on. You give it some thought. I could tell you dissect it to the level that you look at where the odds are going to fall, and you take in the mechanics and all the variables and the facets, and there you go. That's where you're going. That's where you're going to be.
Wherever you are, there. Wherever you go, there you are. But
I'll confuse you on your own quote.
I know. I can't. Yeah. But today was in this day in boxing history was an important one. That still echoes throughout the sport of boxing. So on this day, September 22nd, a couple of things. First, in 1990, Tony the Tiger Lopez wins a 12-round decision over Jorge Paez to retain his IBF World Super Featherweight title, and that took place at the Arco Arena in Sacramento, California. On this day in 2001, Fernando Vargas knocks out Shibata Flores in the 7th round to win the vacant WBA World Junior Middleweight title. It took place in Vegas. On this day in 1938, Peter Kane wins a 15-round decision over Jackie Jurek to win the vacant flyweight title. It took place in Liverpool, England. And finally, on this day, September 22nd, a historical event took place on this day in 1927, and this would be forever remembered in the sport of boxing. On this day in 1927, September 22nd, 1927, Gene Tunney wins a 10-round decision over Jack Dempsey to retain his world heavyweight title at Soldier Field in Chicago. Now, this was a rematch. Jack Dempsey, who was thought to be unbeatable, was beat by Gene Tunney, and they set up the rematch, and Gene Tunney wins again. But this fight was and always will be marred by a long 10 count in the 7th inning when Dempsey put Tunney down. But because they invoked a new rule about going to the neutral corner, before this fight, you didn't have to go to the neutral corner. You were allowed to stand right over the fighter, the fallen fighter, and as soon as he got close to getting up, you could pound him again. This was a new rule that the referee and the commission went over with both fighters prior to the fight, and they both understood the rule. But when Dempsey dropped Tunney, he did not go to a neutral corner. He failed to go to a neutral corner, preventing the referee from starting the count. For many people, have different time frames. What this was, but after very extensive calculation, it was at the very least, a 5-second delay before the count even started. Before Jack Dempsey went to a neutral corner. And thus, Gene Tunney got the extra time to recuperate, got to his feet, continued to fight, and pulled a Floyd Mayweather, danced around for the final rounds, and won the fight on a decision. And this fight was referred to as the long count fight. And to this day, people still remember that. And
that's
that
right.
Took
I
place.
remember hearing that growing up and researching it, and that's exactly what it was.
As a matter of fact, right in this studio, behind the camera shot is my office, and there's a photo of that fight right there of Jack Dempsey finally going to the neutral corner and Gene Tunney struggling to get up on one knee. Very historical fight on this day in 1927. Sal, we had a good week. Unfortunately, it was a little short, but we will be back next week to talk boxing. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you have a great weekend as well as all the fans. So I want to remind everybody this, Sal. I want everybody to know that they got to tune in Monday morning. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby.